Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, October the 18th, 2023. One of the things I sometimes do as an astrologer is set up a chart for the moment someone lands, yes, in an aeroplane. For example, if you go on, you go on holiday, you want to know what the holiday is going to be like, you could actually take the actual moment your plane lands in your whatever foreign destination you're going to and set up a chart for that. And that might give you some indication about the way the holiday is going to go. Of course, you've got maybe a couple of hundred other people in the plane, and so they're all going to have exactly the same experience, supposedly, in theory. Of course, that's impossible. Nonetheless, it's just one of the things you want to check. What is it? What is that holiday going to be like? What's that business trip going to be like? The moment you land, and it works the other way. When you come home, what's it going to be like? When you arrive home, the plane touches down. What's the world going to be like? Your world going to be like when you arrive back from your holiday or your business trip, or your trip to save the world, like Joe Biden. And today, unless he's changed his plans, Joe Biden is visiting the Middle East. I believe he's going to Tel Aviv, and he is going to the Jordanian capital, Amman. Now, I don't know exactly what time he's going to touch down in Tel Aviv. I assume he goes in Air Force One, and you could take that moment when it touches down. I didn't look too hard for the time because I'm assuming we don't know that kind of thing is a security issue, so you don't tell the public in advance when your plane is going to land. But I do want to look at Biden's trip to the Middle East. I know I'm sometimes accused of being overly sort of hostile, biased against Biden, but I certainly hope he has a successful trip. For a man of his age to suddenly have to go to the Middle East just like that, not only have to travel to the Middle East from America, but when he gets there, he can't just relax for a couple of days. He's got to deal with leaders. He's got to negotiate and all of this. I know his team are doing it, possibly doing it for him, and it's just sort of maybe it's symbolic. I don't know exactly what happens, but it must be really difficult. I assume Air Force One is kitted out with it's like a. Is it like a home from home, with beds? I suppose it's got beds and all this kind of stuff, so he can sleep and over the Atlantic and all that kind of stuff. But still, it must be quite a difficult thing for him to do. So in this video, I do want to look at that trip. I want to see what's going on for him astrologically over that. I don't know how long he's going to be there, a day or so, but see what's happening today for Biden's horoscope. I'm going to be constructive. I'm not going to deliberately be looking for bad things. I want to also kind of look at the connections between Biden and Netanyahu. I think that Biden and Netanyahu have met on a number of times, so I don't think anything new is going to emerge from that. I believe they don't get on. I don't know, but I suppose he's going to be trying his hardest to get on with Netanyahu on this trip. So that's my topic for today. But before I look at the Middle East, I want to look at the astrology for you and me for today, and it is Wednesday, October the 18th, 2023. So let's look at what's going on. So what we have here is the positions of the planets on October the 18th, today, 2023, not for Tel Aviv, but for New York. You can see that the moon is now clearly in Sagittarius for all of us. Wherever we are on the world, the moon is in Sagittarius, certainly not in Scorpio. Moon in Sagittarius, it's one of the better places for the moon. Okay, the moon doesn't rule Sagittarius. It's not exalted. It's not exalted in Sagittarius. It's not brilliantly placed in Sagittarius, but it's okay. The moon does tend to function quite well here. It allows us to be sort of free. We can speak our mind, and we did have the moon making a square aspect to Saturn, but that's now past. So I think we're going to feel a lot more freedom than we have compared, when we did over the last couple of days. We can tell people how we feel. We can be honest, and we can seek. We can seek excitement. That's all happening today. Any problems? I think perhaps the problem for today, which I do talk about when I do my forecasts of the 12 signs, the problem for today is that the moon is square Venus. You can see that the moon in Sagittarius is square Venus in Virgo. That's very different energies there. Moon in Sagittarius is about freedom, just being able to express ourselves how we like. Whereas Venus in Virgo, not so much. Venus in Virgo is kind of quite picky, doesn't really relax, just is very concerned about details. And we might find, we're enthusiastic. What's that animal in Winnie the Pooh? Is it the tiger? That bouncy tiger. What's it called? Tigger? We're like that, but then bouncing around. But then Venus tries to bring us down to earth. Venus says, no, you can't do that. Venus is critical. So we've got these two female planets, Moon and Venus, both female planets. Feminine, receptive planets, but they're square. It's not fully working out, because we find that we get picked up. We just want to have fun, we just want to enjoy ourselves. But no, someone spoils the party. I mean, they don't necessarily have to spoil the party, but they could spoil the party. Of course, that someone might be us ourselves. We see other people bouncing around, wanting to be themselves and all of this, and we want to bring them down to earth. We want to sort of make a little criticism and say, but you've forgotten that. Something like that. So we probably need to resist that temptation, unless we've really got a point to make sure. If someone is behaving completely inappropriately, we have to say something, but don't say something if it's not necessary. And this clash between Moon and Sagittarius and Venus in Virgo might actually be internal. We might kind of at one level want to just be free, be Sagittarian, enjoy ourselves, all of this, but something else inside us says, no, you can't do that. And as a result, we might actually become quite self-conscious. And while all this is going on, Venus and Mercury are in semi-square. There's a semi-square aspect between Venus and Mercury. Now, as a pair, Venus and Mercury really work very well. They are very creative when you bring them together. The Venus-Mercury pair is often connected with art, talent, business success. Because Mercury communicates and Venus there's a sort of aesthetic idea. And we can really create something quite wonderful. But with Venus-Mercury semi-square, there's a kind of a creative tension there. We're trying to create something beautiful, or many of us are, but we're also being quite sort of critical. So if you are an artist, and you're painting something, or not just art in terms of pictures, but maybe art with words, like a writer, anyone who's creative. Today could be difficult because you may be too self-conscious. You're creating something, but you're also thinking, is it good enough? And this could make it quite difficult. I mean, I suppose if you're writing, slight danger of writer's block. Okay, you'd think writer's block would involve Saturn, but writer's block. If you do have writer's block today, you have to ask yourself, why are you having writer's block? It's not because you've really hit a block. It's because probably because you're being too self-critical. So if you're trying to create something, I would suggest that you just keep going, that you ask yourself, what is a reasonable level of self-criticism? And just don't go over the top. And, this extends beyond art. If you're writing an email, if you're even a text message or don't be too self-conscious. Sure, you need to have a certain sense of, of what sounds right, but don't take it too far, because it may be the case that however good something is, we may find it just difficult to accept that. We may always want to make changes, and that might actually bring us to a standstill. So watch out for that. Now, this Mercury-Venus semi-square, both these planets are actually on the Uranus-Neptune midpoint today. I mean, they're aspecting the Uranus-Neptune midpoint. Now, Uranus-Neptune as a pair, I love Reinhold Ebertin's description of Uranus-Neptune, the Uranus-Neptune pair, elimination of the waking consciousness. It's just, I love those words. But there may be a kind of spiritual aspect there, because Mercury is the way we communicate, and sometimes the things we say, we may sometimes just say something that just comes from nowhere. It doesn't come from our consciousness; it comes from beyond. So that is a possibility. But there is, I think, scope for confusion, not quite knowing what's going on. But going back to the art, Mercury on Uranus-Neptune midpoint may be about having access to something really out there and cosmic. And so if you are critical of your art, maybe you're critical of something you've never seen before. Maybe you have access to things which just aren't normally available. Venus is also on Uranus-Neptune midpoint. I suppose in relationships, there is, I suppose, a touch of fantasy, a touch of perhaps thinking beyond the situation and going into areas that are fairly fantastic. So I suppose bear that in mind. But overall, I don't think that is a particularly big deal. Now, as I said, the main aspect today is that moon square Venus. I believe. I think that's what's going to have the most influence. So, as I said, when I do my forecast for the 12 signs, that's what's going to have the most influence. So what I'm going to do now is do my forecast. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, October the 18th, 2023. Aries, you need a broader view. And if you hang on, or rather hang out, in the same places with the same people, you're unlikely to get it. No, it's time for a change of scene, and that means that you must seek out unfamiliar surroundings. But that doesn't mean that you have to take risks. The difference between the familiar and the unfamiliar can be the simple movement of your eyes, focusing on one object rather than another. Taurus, you'd like to be left alone to do your own thing. But unfortunately, there are complications that need to be dealt with. These complications needn't be serious, provided they're dealt with promptly. In the process, you mustn't be fooled by surface appearances. And nothing is quite as it seems. Gemini, there's a strong push to get involved with other people and their schemes, and you might find relationships taking up a lot of your time, but you have to be careful. Emotions could get out of hand, and at the same time you might find that the people around you are strangely unsupportive. Cancer, there are things you want to say, but there's a danger that you're misunderstood. You think you're being clear, but people still don't get it. You should therefore keep things simple and only say what's needed. Also, you do need to be careful about taking financial advice, because today it's easy to be led astray. Leo, the conjunction between the Sun and the nodal axis is now exact. On a positive note, you can do some useful networking, and you can make new contacts in many different areas. But on the downside, you could be encouraged to take actions that have negative consequences, which might undermine your reputation. Virgo, there's a strong case for doing nothing. I say this because there is a square aspect between the Moon and Venus, which impacts an introspective sector of your solar chart. But maybe you can turn things round and do things that create stability. And if you tell someone to calm down, they might actually do what they're told. Libra, you don't need to get everything right, especially in social situations. Small mistakes, even big mistakes, may be ignored or at least forgiven. But you are probably being too hard on yourself, trying to get everything right, and being crestfallen when you feel you got something wrong. However, it's not a time to be too self-conscious. Scorpio, there's a danger that you spend too much money, especially in social situations. People just aren't thinking straight, and their money and your money could slip away like water through fingers. You just need to remember that you're the most powerful person in the room, and you're quite capable of making your own decisions. And yes, you can say no. You really can. People will accept your no. Sagittarius, the moon is now well established in your star sign, where it makes a square aspect to Venus. You're ready to go, and you don't want to wait. And in many respects, your impulsiveness is appropriate. You can quickly establish the ground rules, and as a person, you'll be more attractive and charismatic than usual. Not everyone likes you, but so what? Capricorn, it feels like everyone is missing the point. They just don't want to discuss the issues that matter, and that includes the people closest to you. You're inclined to force the issue and perhaps to ask difficult questions, but I don't think you'll make much progress. But solitude brings inspiration. Aquarius, you've got some interesting ideas, but are they realistic? You've skimmed over the details, and if you put these details into action right now, their chances of success, or rather if you put your thoughts into action right now, your chances of success are slim. On the plus side, you can benefit from alternative views, and if you ask for constructive criticism, you'll get it. So don't be offended by what you hear, because I think it's all for the best. Pisces. The moon is now in Sagittarius, at the top of your solar chart. You'll be noticed and appreciated, and in terms of career and business, you can get things moving. I suppose it's your enthusiasm and vision that counts. But one person, probably a younger woman, symbolized by Venus in Virgo, can throw a spanner in the works. I'm now going to move to the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for people watching this video? And as always, I threw 3 coins in the air 6 times, and the first hexagram I got was hexagram 2, the receptive. So you will see that all of the lines are broken. So this is about pure negativity. And again, I don't mean negative in a negative sense, just negative as in receptive. So we're in a situation where there's not really much we can do. There's not really much we should do. We should just soak it up. Soak up the atmosphere, see what's going on, and don't be tempted to take the initiative, because if you do take an initiative, at least in the short term, at least at the beginning of the day, I don't think it's going to work out, and I don't think it's going to be. Appreciated. Now there is a moving line, and it's this 4th line up here that's moving. Now what this 4th line means is that we've got something to offer. We've got a set of talents, we've got a set of resources that we really do have. It's really important. But we have to keep it to ourselves. Right now, it's not the time to show these talents, to show what we can do. The I Ching has the image of a tied up sack. You know, our talents, what we have, is it's all tied up, and we have to keep it secret. Greg Winkup talks about, in his translation of the I Ching, he talks about a quiver of arrows. Yes, we've got a quiver of arrows. Arrows is, of course, something that can cause a lot of damage. It can really make things happen. I suppose if we're hunting, if you're into hunting, well, there's absolutely no need to hunt in temperate climates, is there? I don't know. Anyway, so if we've got, we've got a quiver of arrows, and but we can't do anything with it. So we've got the potential there, but it's potential that is not going to be used. If we're, from a career perspective, our superiors not going to be interested. It's not the time. So we do have to keep that to ourselves. Now, because that 4th line moves, we get a new hexagram. We move to something else. And so the second hexagram that we move to is hexagram 16, which is enthusiasm. Somewhat different, and the pressure is different. Now, enthusiasm is about being excited about something, obviously, or just think about the word enthusiasm. It's quite a straightforward word. We're excited, we want things to happen, we're thinking about the future, all of that kind of stuff. But so what? Enthusiasm on its own does not get results, and I think there is a warning here. If we're not careful, we could just waste our time. And this goes back to what our resources are. In terms of the first hexagram, hexagram 2, the receptive, I talked about these resources you have that are hidden in a sack, or perhaps they're like arrows that aren't used. As you move into enthusiasm, the challenge now is to actually find ways to actually use your resources, because you can't just be enthusiastic. It's just not going to get anywhere. You'll lose the moment. And so what you have to do is you have to take action. You have to start thinking, or at least, not necessarily taking action, but really start planning for it. How are you going to make the most of the opportunity that is available for you? Because it could be a big waste. So work out what you need to be done. What needs to be done. So that's the I Ching, and I'm now going to move back to the move back to the astrology. Now, before I talk about Joe Biden's Middle East trip, I just wanted to pick up on something I forgot to mention a few minutes ago when I was looking at the astrology for today. One thing I did forget to mention was the fact that the Sun is now exactly conjunct the South Node. Now, the South Node in astrology has different connotations. It's become very common to connect the South Node with karma, and sort of a North Node is where we're going to, South Node is where we're coming from, and so with the Sun exactly conjunct the South Node, I've been talking about this for the last few days, and now it's exact. There is this danger, real danger, that today we do things that we really should have grown out of. This could be quite destructive behavior patterns that all of us could fall into, and if it's not us, it may be someone else. So look at how people are behaving. By the way, I checked to see who has got, any famous people have got Sun conjunct South Node. I found that Sid Vicious of Sex Pistols fame, he had Sun conjunct the South Node. I think with Sid Vicious, I'm not going into details about his chart, but one of the problems that Sid Vicious had was obviously drugs, and this was an issue for him throughout his youth until he died. I think he died of a heroin overdose. He just couldn't stop, and he was in an environment where it just wasn't. It just wasn't possible, and maybe being in the Sex Pistols didn't help. But it was this past. It was this behavior from the past. A behavior that I suppose was rooted, in his family life, and he just couldn't get out of it, and that's what killed him. So that's one way in which the South Node, Sun conjunct the South Node, might be working. Another person who I know really nothing about, who has Sun conjunct the South Node, and you'll have to work, I suppose maybe if you're in Australia, you'll have some idea, but Shane Warne, the cricketer, who died quite recently, he had Sun conjunct the South Node. I don't know about his behaviour. Was Shane Warne taking drugs? I don't know. I know he died in Thailand of some heart complication. Was that something he just had, or were drugs involved? I really don't know. But I was just pointing out, if you know about Shane Warne, maybe you can put a comment about, if you can try to work out how that Sun conjunct South Node might have impacted him. Another person who had Sun conjunct South Node, quite a heroic person, was Li Liang. He was, I don't know if you remember, there's his Sun conjunct South Node. He was the heroic Chinese doctor who caught COVID at a really early stage, really early in the epidemic. I think he was like a whistleblower in the hospital, if I've got his birth date right, October the 12th, 1986. And he was a whistleblower. But I think he made videos about it, but he unfortunately died. I think he died on February 6, 2020. I think, wasn't he an eye doctor? He caught it from one of his patients. I think he was an eye doctor in Wuhan. So I'm not sure quite how that works, but I just thought I'd mention him just to remember him. I mean, he was a very sort of heroic figure. So, but it's interesting. I'm sure this is pure coincidence that the three people I found in the charts I've been looking at over the last few years who had Sun conjunct South Node, all three of them died before their time. And I'm absolutely not saying that that is a standard feature of Sun conjunct South Node. I'm sure that is just coincidence. So anyway, let's now move on to Joe Biden's trip to the Middle East. So the visit is. Here's the chart for today. I have no idea when he's landing. So I've just gone for noon Tel Aviv. So what's going on in this chart? Well, first thing, he's moving. The Sun is conjunct the South Node, as I've just been saying. I think that sort of tells us about the environment he's moving into. I think he's dealing with a lot of people who are stuck in the past, who are going into sort of past patterns of behavior. You know, whether that's Netanyahu, whether that's Israel, whether it's the Palestinians, and so forth. That's the environment he's moving into. And I suppose also himself. Biden has been doing this kind of stuff for years. And so he will be stuck in the past. So people, I'm not saying that to criticize Biden. It's just that's going to be the general environment, and I suppose it kind of tells us something we already know about the Middle East and the Palestine problem. It's just something that is rooted in the past. People have made. I was looking at comments, by the way, and a couple of people were being very critical on Netanyahu, that it's all Netanyahu's fault and all this kind of stuff. Of course, it's not. This whole thing in Palestine has been going on since the 19th century and earlier. It's often forgotten until the First World War. This whole area was run by the Turks. So whether it's the Turks have been, actually interesting trivia, but Ben Gurion, I think, who was Israel's first president, he went to university in Constantinople in Turkey. So the Turks ran this place. Obviously you had the start of Zionism at the end of the 19th century. To blame Netanyahu for the whole thing, as some people have kind of suggested, is completely unreasonable, because this thing has been going on for a very long time, and I suppose that's the Sun conjunct the South Node. And that's what Biden is going into. He's also going into this. The moon is square Venus. I mean, I don't think it's catastrophic, moon square Venus, but as I was talking when talking about personal details about moon square Venus, it's very pernickety. Biden might come into the Middle East saying, let's have a brand new idea, let's look at it from a different angle, but then Venus in Virgo is just looking at the details. Yeah, but you've got to consider this and you've got to consider that and whatever and whatever and whatever, and that might make it very difficult to get anything done because of the concern about details. I'm not saying that this chart is particularly bad, but it's not particularly good. So, my hunch is that, not a great deal is going to happen as a result of Biden's trip to the Middle East. Now, as far as Biden himself is concerned, let's see what's going on for Biden right now. as he goes into uh, as he makes this trip. Assuming he makes it, of course, he's not. As I make this video, he hasn't arrived yet. Maybe the whole thing will be cancelled. I don't know. Maybe I'm just wasting my time talking about this. So the moon, at least at midday, is at 7 degrees 17 Sagittarius, Tel Aviv time. So that means that the moon is making an opposition to Biden's Saturn. That's not great. I suppose you could say, well, Saturn may be the old man trying to make sense of it, but moon opposition his Saturn. I suppose from his perspective, he has his views. That's him, his Saturn. He has a particular view of the world, and the moon in Gemini is just going somewhere else. He's dealing with, I think, he's perhaps dealing with sort of ideas and things that he's not fully familiar with. The situation may not be quite as he sees it. Now, I understand that, of course, the big negotiations, Biden will have nothing to do with it. But we have to remember, he is president of the United States. He is the American head of state. So this isn't just Biden's chart. In a way, this is a chart of the United States at the moment while he's president. So that, I think, is a bit of a problem, having moon opposition his Saturn. He is also at a time when you notice Uranus is at 2206 Taurus, which is opposition that opposes Mercury in his own chart. So it's not exact, but this is a time for Biden where he's a bit overwhelmed. I mean, his cognitive faculties are overwhelmed. I mean, anyone's cognitive faculties would be overwhelmed by what's going on in the Middle East, particularly if one is trying to negotiate. But I think his cognitive faculties are going to be particularly overwhelmed. So that could be a bit of an issue. And so one wonders to what extent he's going to really be able to do anything useful. Jupiter. There's Jupiter. Jupiter is at 1236 Taurus. Biden's Mars is at 1235 Scorpio. So, in fact, Biden has Jupiter exactly opposition his Mars when he goes to the Middle East. That's an exact that is probably the most important aspect. Now, it is an opposition. I know we see Jupiter as being a fortunate influence, but if it's opposition, that could be a problem. He may want to assert himself. He may want to intervene. He may want to really say something, do something, whatever, but he may not quite know how to do it. Jupiter, it may be inappropriate, and of course, on a personal level, Jupiter opposition Mars, I suppose he needs to sort of watch out for. He needs to. I know he does need to watch his step. I know Biden always needs to watch his step. I think that photo I got, that's just before he falls down. But with Jupiter opposition Mars, he does need to watch his step there. But I suspect it's not particularly constructive, that Jupiter opposition Mars. So much he wants to do, but is he actually? Is he actually going to be able to? Is he actually going to be able to achieve anything? I should also look at his lunar return. So the moon return. The moon has a cycle of 1 month. So every month we have a lunar return. So this is Joe Biden's lunar return for September the 30th, 2023. You can see, that the moon has returned to where it was where he was born. So that's his lunar return. Not in itself a dramatic lunar return, except for the fact he does have Saturn on the midheaven. Saturn in Pisces on the midheaven. This month for Biden it's just difficult. It's just difficult. The whole process of being president, Saturn on the midheaven, is just hard work, and matters are not helped by the fact that Saturn is on Saturn. By the way, Biden has his south node at 09 Pisces. So this is a reminder that right now, Saturn is hitting. Saturn is really hitting his south node, and so if you see the nodal axis as being about networking, about people, I think dealing with people, whether it's Netanyahu or people in his own, like people at home in Washington, it's just hard work. His contacts and his network, it's not working as well as it should do. Plus, Saturn on the south node, it's kind of hitting his line of least resistance. He's having to deal with the impact of the past, and with Saturn on the midheaven in the lunar return, that's not great. It's just tough being president, particularly as he approaches his 81st birthday. Of course, as I said, many people could handle being president at 81. Not a problem, but I think for Biden it is particularly difficult. Now, we could relocate this lunar return to Tel Aviv, and the only thing about when you relocate this lunar return, this might be how he experiences his lunar return when he visits Tel Aviv, even though he wasn't in Tel Aviv when he had his lunar return. There's just a reminder that he has Mercury opposition Neptune in this lunar return. That seems to be a confused Mercury. And remember, we already know in his natal chart that he's got transiting Uranus hitting his Mercury. So he is a bit overwhelmed, a bit cognitively challenged, as I said, as we all would be dealing with the Middle East. But with Mercury opposition Neptune, I know I'm perhaps stating the obvious, but it's going to be quite difficult for him to work out what's going on, particularly when he goes to Tel Aviv. Finally, I want to look at Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu. So that's Joe Biden's chart, and that's Benjamin Netanyahu's chart on the outside. Interestingly, Netanyahu has his Venus at 1228 Sagittarius, which, if America was born, if independence was declared at 5:10 in the afternoon on the 4th of July 1776, that would, in Philadelphia, that would mean that Netanyahu's Venus is conjunct America's ascendant. Some people say that Netanyahu is more American than Israeli, and so Netanyahu does overall have a strong connection with the United States. He's somehow able to get his way with the United States, of course, and that's perhaps an important thing for an Israeli prime minister. As far as how the two men get on, I don't think we're going to say anything spectacular, because they've dealt with each other before. But it's possibly worth noting that Netanyahu's Mars at 26 Leo is square Biden's Sun-Venus conjunction. So that does suggest a tension there. There's something about Netanyahu that Biden's Scorpio finds a bit off-putting. This man is too pushy. This man is in my face. I'm not quite sure if I really get on with him. That kind of thing. So that's something I just wanted to point out. And we shouldn't forget. Back to Saturn transiting Biden's south node. yeah, it's happening all the time, but it doesn't help when you're going to the Middle East and trying to have these negotiations. It doesn't help when you've got Saturn transiting your South Node. It makes the whole thing difficult. So, I'm not saying that Biden's trip to the Middle East is going to be a disaster, but I'm not sure if he's going to accomplish very much. I think the main aspect for Biden at the moment is the fact he's got Jupiter exactly opposition his Mars. I think there's just this danger of inappropriate assertion, or he also had, he could watch out for his physical health, having falls, that kind of thing. That would apply to anyone. If you've got Jupiter opposition your Mars, you could just push things too far. He doesn't want to exhaust himself with Jupiter opposition Mars. So maybe, if you've got Jupiter opposition Mars, you're going to want to really push it physically, but you may not. You may find you hit your limit. So that is something for him to consider. So that's all I'm going to say about the subject of Joe Biden's trip to the Middle East. I hope it goes well. I hope they can sort something out for Gaza, but I suspect not a great deal is going to happen. Anyway, I will talk to you again tomorrow.